Right then, so as you have guessed, the context of the situation is a little different than what I explained. I wanted to tell you this so that I can get a hold on your mental state to see if you're suitable for what I have planned. Shiro smiled. Softly, what do you have in mind? Lyrica asked curiously. That can stay a secret for now, since it's not something I need you to do immediately. My test just now is to see how much you've grown so that I can plan for the future. Anyways, I'll tell you the truth of the situation now. I didn't lie when I said we were surrounded on all sides and I was forced to kill your mother. However, what I didn't say was that your mother was the one who forced me. When we were at the end of our ropes, she grabbed my hand and plunged it into her own chest, taking away her own life, which caused me to class up into Tier 6. With my newfound power, I was able to escape, and our gracious help arrived not too long after. Shiro explained with a sad smile, staying silent. The party listened carefully while Helion was especially surprised since he was completely oblivious to the fact that she had reincarnated. All he knew was that she lost her memories. In Arya, I was part of a team known as the Hero Party. We were led by the Light Hero, or rather, Light God known was Ikari Lumiere, also known as Duan Han Ing in this life. The one that killed me in my second life as Kuromi. He is also going to be our biggest problem in the new age since I was the one who killed his avatar in this world. Shiro chuckled. Wait, so that's who you were killing when you left last time? Madison widened her eyes at the mention of Shiro killing a god's avatar. Well, it wasn't on purpose. You see, the only goal was to rescue Yuki, but it just so happened that Ikari was there, so we decided to kill him. Don't worry though, he wasn't Tier 6, so we lived. Shiro laughed. URG. I both hate and love the fact that you survived. Hate it because you're going to be as reckless as ever. Love it since you're still alive. Madison sighed. Ha ha ha, don't worry about it. Anyhow, weren't you girls going to do a raid? Shiro asked. Asterisk cough. Hearing her question, the girls paused and looked at each other. We forgot. They forced a smile as Shiro rolled her eyes. Why? Don't I join for old time's sake? She offered with a chuckle. Sure, it's a level 200 raid called Sanctuary of Sin. There is a total of 4 bosses, and they're mostly annoying due to the curses and debuffs. Their physical attributes aren't too bad, so it should be a walk in the park. Lyrica replied. You say that, but their physical attributes cause the people in this city to not complete this raid, you know? Especially after curses. Madison reminded as Lyrica shrugged. True, but we have Sylvia to cleanse us, no. Lyrica smiled. Speaking of cleansing, I managed to get a pretty interesting skill in my fight against Duan Han Ing. It's a healing skill. Shiro called out with a smile. Oh, you got another one? Don't you have the Fire of Life? Sylvia asked curiously. Yeah, it's a skill called Grace, and it's ranked EX. Shiro nodded. Explaining the details of the skill to the party, they looked at her with confused eyes. Aren't you a mage? Sylvia cried out in sadness as she hugged her knees on one of the sofas. Chinyu sat by her side to comfort her. How the hell did you even get an EX rank skill on top of an EX rank title to buff this skill? Hell, I didn't even know EX was a rank. Who the hell is the healer between us? She protested at the unfairness of the system. Well, I had quite a few decent healing skills, so I combined them. Due to what had happened, I obtained a portion of a phoenix's vitality, meaning fires can heal me. Therefore, I combined my life fire, phoenix fire, and celestial star, and out came the EX healing skill. To be fair, I wasn't even attempting to make this. It just kind of appeared. Shiro replied honestly. You know, if I didn't know you any better, I'd think that you're showing off. Just look at poor Sylvie over there. She looks like she wants to strangle you. Nimue sighed. Asterisk cough, heh. I think I might as well change classes to a berserker since Shiro's got the healing covered. Sylvia said with a hollow laugh. Oh right, Sivli. Since I can only get 1 charge per day with this skill, I can at most heal 10 people in this party unless it's in an army of more than 100. Therefore, you are still our lifeline. Just think of me as the supporting act to the support. Shiro said with a smile. This seemed to put some life into Sylvia as she nodded in satisfaction. Yes, the healer should be the healer, and the DPS should stay the DPS. She thought with a smile. But you get to heal even 1,000,000 people when you're in a large army, right? For the small price of half your mana as well. From what I know of your regeneration, that can be recovered quite quickly. So if you're in an army of 1,000,000 people, with all 10 charges, You are technically healing 10 million people in total. Aram analyzed as Shiro could hear Sylvia's heart shatter. The rest of their party looked at Aram with wide eyes due to the fact that she had essentially plunged a dagger into Sylvia's heart. After all, her ManhwaRecap was not as monstrous as Shiro's, so healing over 10 million people was a pipe dream. Plus, should she be in an army or 100 million people, then she can heal 100 million people. This will continue to stack up as long as it's over 100 people, which isn't hard even in a raid. Covering her mouth, Aram realized what she had done. As she glanced towards Sylvia, who was now depressed. Don't mind her, Sivli. Obviously, I can't heal 100 million people at once. Just for 50% mana? Hell no. Shiro persuaded as Sylvia nodded, since that was indeed a little too difficult. Her broken heart started to mend. Now that's AF asterisk king lie, isn't it? Nimue rolled her eyes. Hush, sometimes it's good to lie. Especially in this situation. Shiro shrugged. Anyways, before we go into the raid, why don't we have Helion do some maintenance on your equipment? Shiro suggested with a smile. If you don't mind, of course. She turned to Helion. It's my job. He shrugged. Hearing that he had no problems with this, the party presented their battered equipment. Well, at least it isn't as bad as Shiro's armor when I saw it. Crazy Woman decided to fight a tier 6 as a tier 4, and her soulbound armor was almost destroyed. The F asterisk king thing is graded at red +2. One of my best works, Helion said while evaluating the armor. Obtaining the information on how Shiro was fighting a tier 6 entity, the entire party glared towards Shiro's location, but she had already disappeared. So that's what Mum was fighting. Lysandra pouted in annoyance, since she felt like she had a heart attack halfway through a dungeon and collapsed. Just be glad it ain't a tier 7. Madison sighed. She did that too. Killed a guy known as a god slayer and obtained a black grade material. Helion cut in as silence filled the room. So you're telling me, in the time that we were separated, Shiro fought a tier 5 Gorgon that was weakened, a tier 5 avatar of a god that has killed her twice, and could use tier 6 magic, a tier 6 monster that forced her to use all of her healing spells along with almost killing her, and as if that wasn't enough, she also killed a guy known as the God Slayer. Madison asked with a twitching smile. Sounds about right. Helion nodded his head. Taking a deep breath, Madison smiled. I'm going to pretend I didn't hear any of that. All I know is that Shiro fought some strong people. The end, she said with a smile as the rest of the party agreed. It was better not to dig too deep into what had happened. Doing some repairs on the armor wasn't too difficult, since the armor wasn't as damaged as Shiro's. Plus, their quality was lower, so the amount of focus needed wasn't too intense, allowing Helion to fix it quickly with ease. During this time, Shiro decided to walk around the Vatican City a little so that she could get a general gist of what was happening. Looking at a few of the orphanages, Shiro could see that the children were quite happy despite having lost their parents. The amount of care put into orphanages was quite high. No wonder Lisa decided to help this place. To guarantee the safety in this city is going to be a little difficult, since we'll be going deep into politics, which isn't my strong suit. Shiro thought with a sigh. She was talented in the area of combat, but politics was something else entirely. While she can read people quite well, it was not something she enjoyed when viewed in this context. Therefore, she needed to find a way to help this place, but not become completely attached, which is what Lysandra is experiencing right now. There are two main problems: demons and the manpower in this place. The fighting standard of this city is abnormally low despite their levels. Considering their level, one would presume that they can at least hold their own in a high-level dungeon. But from what I've seen so far, that's not the case. Shiro thought, while looking towards the training hall off in the distance. Before coming to the orphanage, she took a small detour to see their fighting potential, but she was quite disappointed with what she had seen. That if she had to describe it, it was as if level 100 adventurers took a cheap pill to become level 200. They did not perform to the standard of a level 200. To make matters worse, that was when she compared it to the average level 200 and not the more talented ones. For an entire city to be below standard was seriously abnormal. Shaking her head, she said down on the roof of the orphanage, "Demons are easily dealt with, but I don't know their objective. I'll probably have to torture some info out of them." Nimue, any ideas on how we can solve the problem of this city's low combat potential? Shiro asked curiously. Not much, to be honest. Perhaps you can make something for them to upgrade their combat experience? Remember the simulation back in Kairosa? Why don't you make something similar to that? Nimue suggested. I suppose that could work, but only in the long run. It doesn't solve anything in the short run, which is the annoying part. I need something to resolve everything now if possible, so that we can move on without worrying about the people here. There's only so much attention I can give them. Shiro shook her head, harsh but true. Regardless, I'll try to think of something later, I suppose. Shiro sighed and stood up, stretching her body. She made her way back to the party, with everyone's armors in good condition. They prepared to go to the raid. So is it just us, or are there more people coming to the raid with us? Shiro asked curiously. Nope, it's just us since it minimizes the risks on the other people in this city. Plus, there are certain risks that come with inviting more people than necessary. They might mess up somewhere and make everything harder. Lyrica replied with a shake of her head. True, Shiro agreed. Anyways, I'll tell you about the raid since you don't know yet. The first boss that we'll be facing is the Faceless Nun. Her main weapons are a pair of scythes that aren't too hard to avoid, but the attack patterns are rather annoying if the tank can't hold aggro. Lyrica shrugged. As for her skills, she mainly travels around in the shadows, but there is an unavoidable attack that you have to tank. There are motes scattered around the room that will boost your defense, but you can only take 2 at most. When you get 2, the boss will then lock you down in place, so someone must take the motes off you. Once everyone gets 2, we can then transfer it to the person who is going to tank it. Unless all 10 is on the person being attacked, the damage they take is going to be insane. She continued as Shiro nodded her head. Sylvie, you have a skill to heal everyone, right? Shiro asked with a smile. Yup. Why do you ask? Because I have a skill called Shared Burden where I can choose to allocate all the damage taken. So if there are, let's say, 80 points of damage, I can make it so that everyone takes 10 rather than one person taking 80. Therefore, if Maddie gets all the motes alone with some buffs from me and you, the damage that Maddie takes is reduced even more. Plus, if you then heal everyone, the damage would be negated. Shiro explained with a smile. What the hell? Isn't Shared Burden similar to a tank skill? Why do you have a tank skill? Madison questioned with an "Are you serious" face. If I can get an EX healing skill, why can't I get a tank skill? Shiro tilted her head. Why do I bother thinking about things sometimes? Madison sighed. There we go. Honestly, despite only leaving for a bit, I feel like you girls have forgotten what it's like to be around me. Shiro laughed. So you know about the ridiculousness yourself? Madison retorted. Of course I do. I'm supposed to be a damage dealer. After all, just if you don't mind me asking, are there any prerequisites that must be met for me to damage the boss? Shiro asked. Yes. The condition is that all the motes must be collected and everyone must have 2. During the time that everyone has the buff, we have to deal as much damage as we can. Once that small window of time is over, we'll need to move the buff onto Maddie so that she can tank the hit. Lyrica explained as Shiro nodded her head. I see. Well, that's not too bad. Shiro smiled while thinking about what she should do. Seeing this smile, the party felt like something was going to be wrong. Please don't tell me that you're thinking about how you can one-shot the boss. Madison forced a smile. Looking back at Madison with a raised eyebrow, Shiro was surprised that she had hit the hammer on the nail. Sighing softly, Madison shook her head. Why don't you just one-shot all the bosses at this rate? She shrugged. Oh, don't think that I won't try, haha. Shiro laughed. I was kidding. We need combat experience as well, you know. Madison pouted. Don't worry, I know. I'm just going to poke the boss a little. Just a little, and you girls can do the rest. I'll act as support with Sylvie. Shiro grinned. However, hearing this, the party became more worried as poke had 2 very different meanings in Shiro's dictionary. Either one, it's to essentially defile the crap out of them, or 2, it's to one-shot them. Neither was good. As long as you don't kill it in one go. Madison sighed. So long as the boss isn't dead in one shot, they can still practice their teamwork. Arriving at the raid gate, they could see a few adventurers preparing to go in, but the party only frowned since they didn't want additional casualties. However, if they wanted to risk their lives, then they wouldn't stop them. The sudden appearance of the party caused a small commotion amongst the adventurers, especially those that spotted Shiro and Ian, surprised at the new addition of 2 beauties, who looked to be twins due to their similarity. They couldn't help but sneak a few pictures of the party before sharing it on the net. Naturally, this didn't escape Shiro's attention, but she didn't care since her primary source of danger had been dealt with, opening the gates of the raid. The party entered feeling rather relaxed, as it was like the good old days where Shiro would do raids with them. That as their vision returned to normal, they found themselves in front of a giant labyrinth of sorts. That in the distance, a giant cathedral of sorts could be seen. Gray walls with blotches of blood could be seen as the material seemed to fade into darkness near the edges. Looking up at the sky, they saw that it was night, but the lighting in this place suggested otherwise. Right then, to get to the first boss, we'll need to get through this place first. Mind your step for traps, but otherwise, it should be a walk in the park. Lyrica smiled. Reaching into her inventory, she pulled out her sword as the rest of the party did the same. Making their way through the labyrinth, they were ambushed a few times by ghost-like figures who wielded scythes, but they were easily dealt with. With Madison at the front of the party along with Chunyu, she was able to taunt the enemy before they could focus the backline. Since the monsters were unable to target the backline, they were open to lethal attacks that could end them in a single swipe. Looking at the party's performance, Shiro nodded her head in satisfaction, especially the teamwork between Chunyu and Madison. One would spot the enemy quickly while the other taunted the moment they're discovered. Comparing it to the hero party that she was in before, Shiro had to admit that the girls were making large improvements while she wasn't watching. All we need now is probably an enchanter or some sorts, and a full party will be made. Helion is acting as a berserker of sorts right now with his axe, but he can double as a tank. Shiro thought to herself while a figure suddenly appeared above her. Before anyone could say anything, Shiro snapped her fingers as 7 copies of Athra appeared and shredded the monster to pieces and scattered him into the wind. Never mind, I should worry about the monsters when they target you. Madison shrugged. Regardless of where Shiro stood, she was akin to a tactical nuke that was ready to be fired. Try to attack her, and the bomb will go off. Ignore her, and the bomb will also set off. It was a lose-lose situation for the monsters. While he interrupted my thoughts so naturally, I had to teach him a lesson. Shiro chuckled. Right then, now that I've seen a bit of your capabilities, you want to see mine? She asked with a smile. No thanks. Because I know that a bit of your capabilities means that every trap and monster in the first part will be erased. Madison shook her head as the rest of the party agreed. True. Shiro laughed since that was indeed what she was planning. Making their way through the labyrinth, they soon arrived in front of the giant cathedral. From within the dark building, they could hear ominous chanting paired with a rather creepy organ sound that echoed through the area. Well, doesn't that sound pleasant? Shiro raised her eyebrow. It's going to be more creepy inside the cathedral. Anyways, Sylvie, give us some buffs, please. We're going to get the moats as fast as we can. Lyrica smiled as Sylvia nodded her head. Twirling the staff in her hands, she slammed it against the ground, and a golden aura wrapped around everyone in the party. Snapping her fingers, a Tier 4 magic circle expanded out from their feet as another buff was applied, giving the golden aura a green hue. Repeating this process 2 more times, Shiro watched as her stats increased explosively for the next hour. I thought we needed an enchanter, but it seems like you got this under wraps. Shiro chuckled. Of course. It's not like I only know healing spells after all. I do my research on spells from other classes so that I can manually construct them. Without the system. Sylvia smiled. Pushing open the giant set of doors, Madison cracked her neck as she glared at the figure kneeling in the center of the room. She was surrounded by corpses that seemed to writhe in tandem with her chant. Looking at the walls of this place, Shiro noticed that it was entirely made from flesh as countless mouths and eyes could be seen. Seeing the mouths, she finally understood that the organ sound originated from these mouths. Despite the outside of the cathedral looking rather normal, the inside was akin to the stomach of a beast. The flesh would pulse from the hymns as the party readied themselves. Just as they readied themselves, the countless eyes snapped towards their position as the woman in the center started to stand up. Why have you come to disrupt this sacred ritual? She asked, slowly turning around. Even though her face was obscured by her hood, the party could sense the killing intent in her eyes. Without saying anything, Chinyu faded into the shadows since his main job was to locate the moats and transfer it to everyone. Because it ain't scared at all. Madison taunted. Activating her skill, her body charged at the nun like a battering ram. Asterisk bang. Crashing against her body, Madison slammed the nun into the walls, just as the nun slammed against the flesh wall. Her body sunk deep into the flesh as her voice rang out from the mouths around the area. Then I shall exterminate you. Asterisk clang. Clashing against Madison's shield, a giant scythe erupted out from the ceiling. The woman's body was now elongated, with her robe in tatters. Her face was still covered by the hood, but they could see a single bloodshot eye glaring at them with anger. Grabbing the handle of the scythe with her thin, bony fingers, the woman crawled on the ground and approached the party, despite her movements. Looking like they were in slow motion, she was in fact very fast. Quickly raising her shield, Madison managed to block the strike a second time before pivoting on her foot. Twisting her body, she slammed the face of her shield against the woman, knocking her back by a few steps. Madison activated a second taunt skill. This time, the woman's killing intent was entirely focused on Madison. I've got her locked on me, Madison called out, raising her defense stat with her skills. Got it, Lyrica nodded. Crouching down slightly, she grabbed her sword and flickered from her spot. Reappearing above the woman, she slashed the blade along the spine. Unfortunately, no blood was drawn, and all they could see was the robes being damaged slightly. TCH. Clicking her tongue, Lyrica vaulted over the nun's body before cleaving her sword upwards against her stomach. Forcing her body up ever so slightly, she glanced towards Lysandra and Aram. Seeing this, the duo sprang into action. Unfurling her wings, Lysandra dashed into action as light swords appeared around her. Flicking her wrist, the swords clashed against the boss's limbs, forcing her to lose her footing while a Tier 4 magic circle expanded out above her. Suddenly, the gravity around the woman seemed to increase dramatically as her body crashed against the ground, causing a small crater to be formed while the light swords dug deep into her body, drawing some blood. Asterisk whistle. You can really tell that they're experienced with working together, can't you? Shiro smiled. Of course. After all, in dangerous dungeons, they had to rely on their teammates. After fighting between life and death for a long time, they're bound to know each other's habits and how to combo their attacks together. Nimue nodded her head. I suppose I shouldn't slack off either. Should I use my sword or my gun? Neither. Both your weapons will probably draw aggro due to their ridiculous damage numbers. Why don't you use your fist for now? Why not? That seems fun. Shiro agreed. Cracking her knuckles, nanobots swarmed around her hands as she created a pair of fighter gloves for herself. Embedding some fighter skill CHI.P.S into the gloves, she enhanced her strength stat along with a few fighter passive skills. Adjusting her footwork slightly, she launched her body towards the woman while cracking the ground beneath her, appearing in front of the woman. Shiro grinned as her eyes seemed to glow with an ominous red. Stomping the ground in front of her, she forced the woman up slightly before uppercutting her in the jaw. Asterisk crack. The sound of bones cracking could be heard as her body was pushed out of the magic circle. Crashing against the ceiling, Shiro noticed that all the killing intent seemed to focus on her. I drew aggro with just a single punch? Shiro questioned. With confusion, Helion, who was about to slam his axe towards the woman, froze up in surprise at Shiro's sudden burst of physical prowess, while Madison only face-palmed. Your attack is ridiculous, she muttered. Don't worry, I have a perfect skill for this. Shiro waved her hand as she created an amulet. Embedding the amulet with a ranger skill, she took a step back before activating Play Dead. Falling on the ground, the aggro was transferred back to Madison. Once this happened, Shiro stood back up with a smile. See, no problems at all. She grinned. Unfortunately, with her revival, the aggro returned to her once more. Taking a deep breath, Madison handed Shiro her shield. Why don't you be the tank? I still have my attack mode after all. Madison forced a smile as she pulled out her great axe. Sure, why not? Shiro shrugged as this was probably for the best. Snapping her fingers, nanobots surged around her and created a suit of metal around her body. Choosing the blueprint of Bastion 2 Malawian Quatches, her current armor was one that banked heavily on tanking hits. The only problem was that it had essentially zero mobility. Looking at the heavy metal armor that appeared around Shiro, Madison looked down at her own armor before cursing softly. Fuck it, I'm taking it out on the boss. She grumbled. With Shiro now tanking the boss in her heavy metal armor, the party didn't have to worry about taking aggro since her attack was the highest out of the entire group. While this was happening, Ian decided to just relax and poke at the flesh walls. She would set them on fire amongst other things to see what kind of reaction they would have. As for Chinyu, he had managed to find 5 motes so far. Since they had 9 members in the party, they needed to get 18 motes in total for the damage phase to begin. Oh right, Maddie, I'll play dead for the damage phase so that you can get the aggro back. After all, unlike you, I don't have any skills to buff up my defense. The only reason that my armor is working is because I'm repairing the damage before the woman can attack again. Shiro called out as she tanked another hit from the woman. Stepping back slightly, Shiro slammed the shield in retaliation, bouncing the force back to her. That's fine. Honestly, I'm just enjoying myself right now. It's rare that I use my axe, you know. Madison replied. Pulling her axe back, magma surged around the blade. Cleaving towards the boss, the axe left a faint trail of red as sizzling sounds could be heard. Parts of the woman's cloak started to burn, but it was soon repaired due to its nature as monster cloth. After all, it would be quite awkward to be fighting an NAKD boss. I found the 10th one. We'll need to start getting the motes, or else more won't spawn. Chinyu called out since they would be locked in place the moment they grabbed 2 motes. Got it. Ian, Lysandra, Aram, Helion, and Sylvia can grab the first 10. We'll keep the boss busy in the meantime. Lyrica called out as they made their way towards Chinyu, while the 6 of them were transferring motes with each other so that they're not stuck in place. Shiro noticed that the boss was now being quite aggressive. By this point, not only was she trying to cut her head off with the scythe, but she was also grabbing her shield so that she couldn't move it into place. Due to her rather low strength stat, the boss succeeded in moving her shield out of the way. However, unfortunately for the boss, Shiro wasn't limited by her hands. Creating a pair of cannons on the armor, she narrowed her eyes and shot the boss. Just as she pried the shield to the side, asterisk, bang bang. With 2 chunks of metal crashing against her ribs, the boss tumbled against the ground as blood dripped from her body. Don't grab the shield, Shiro taunted with a smile. Honestly, if I was the boss, I would be infuriated while fighting against you. You don't even need a taunt skill to piss off the boss. Madison raised her eyebrow. Well, it's just something I picked up after fighting a bunch in my first life. Turns out that people get pretty angry if you taunt them with a few words after a poke. Shiro shrugged. I don't think it's the words that pissed them off. Madison's smile twitched. Well, I got the same result, so it's fine. You think I should poke this woman too? Make sure the aggro is secured. Shiro asked. No, because I think if you did that, the aggro wouldn't go even if you play dead. Madison shook her head, while the 2 were joking around and keeping the boss busy. They managed to transfer all of the motes. With the motes now collected, more started to spawn and Chinyu had to go look for them again. But just as the rest of the party returned to the fight, the nun took a step back and glared at everyone. Without saying anything, a red demonic aura seemed to flicker from her body. Watch out, she's pissed. Lyrica called out with a frown. Asterisk bang. Before the rest of the party could properly react, the nun appeared behind Shiro and tried to cut her back with the scythe. Unfortunately, a cage of nanobots erupted out from around her, blocking the scythe. Sorry, but my back is pretty guarded. Shiro turned around slowly, slamming the shield down. A Tier 5 magic circle expanded out around the cage. Activating frozen slumber, chains of ice wrapped around the boss as she was slowly frozen. Her eyes constricted in a mixture of surprise and anger. Gritting her teeth, the boss plunged her hand into her chest just before she was completely frozen, crushing her heart. Her body fell limp on the ground as a black mist started to flow out of her body, forming into the shape of what seemed to be a grim reaper above her. The reaper twisted her body and slashed the cage into pieces. Well, damn. Shiro raised her eyebrow since she didn't expect her attack power to increase. Understanding that just standing there and tanking the hit was probably a bad idea, Shiro dismissed her armor and summoned her swords, throwing the shield back to Madison. Shiro grabbed Athera and quickly parried the Reaper's next attack, redirecting it to the ground. Shiro created an orb of fire and slammed it against the Reaper's chest. Since she was currently in spirit form, Fire should be rather effective against her, and as she had predicted, the Reaper quickly retreated hastily. Merging back into the nun's body, she was healed back to full. No wonder we need the motes to deal damage. It seems like she'll keep doing this over and over again to heal back to full. Shiro raised her eyebrow. Exactly. Hence why we just need to keep her busy. Honestly, this was supposed to be a bit harder, you know. Lyrica chuckled, and I'm guessing I changed that. Shiro smiled. Yup. Lyrica nodded as she charged at the now healed nun. Keeping her busy for a little longer, Chinyu had finally found the remaining motes of light. Now then, this is going to be a little annoying since Shiro has a firm hold on the aggro. We'll have her play dead, then we'll bring her to the first two. While that happens, Sylvie, I'll need you to buff up Madison for a bit so that she can keep the nun busy. Once Shiro gets 2 motes while playing dead, she'll come out of that state and grab the aggro again. Lyrica instructed as Shiro nodded her head. Jumping back, she activated her play dead skill and collapsed on the ground. Losing her initial target, the nun turned towards Madison. Perfect. Lyrica nodded and dashed towards Shiro, picking her up. Into a princess carry, Lyrica suppressed the blush that was creeping up on her face as she arrived next to Chunyu, who was ready to transfer the motes. Once the motes were transferred, Shiro opened her eyes. Am I heavy? Shiro joked with a raised eyebrow. Nope. Lyrica chuckled as she let Shiro down. Just as she did this, the nun flickered above them with her scythe raised. No sneak attacking my best friend, now you hear me. Shiro smiled, snapping. Her fingers, ice spikes erupted out from the pillars around them and stabbed against the nun, pushing her body back. Right then, I'll get ready to play dead again when the boss is going to attack, okay? Shiro chuckled since she wasn't planning on joining in on the damage phase. After all, if she joined, she would probably kill the boss in one go. Nodding her head, Lyrica and Madison quickly dashed after Chunyu so that they could collect the other motes. With all 18 motes collected, a collection of blood runes appeared on the boss scythe. Faceless Nun, LVL 200 boss, vulnerable, HP 700 000 000 /700 000 000 MP 1 600 000 000 /2 000 000 Now that the boss was in a vulnerable state, they could finally damage her properly. Since she could potentially kill the boss in one go, Shiro decided to make herself a chair so that she could sit down for a bit. Seeing this, the boss was infuriated and tried to cleave the scythe at her. But Shiro only brushed it aside using Phantom Path. With the boss guard open, the rest of the party charged at her like ravenous wolves, ripping parts of her flesh off with every hit. Her HP plummeted quickly as she was soon reduced to 400 million. Gritting her teeth, the boss raised her scythe above her head as Shiro understood that this was the unblockable attack. Passing her motes to Madison so that she could tank the hit, Shiro followed it up with her grace skill. Grace, Shiro called out with humor before playing dead. With all the aggro transferred to Madison, she promptly raised her shield to tank the strike. Multiple auras swirled around her body as Sylvia buffed her defense up even higher. With the sheer amount of buffs that was on Madison, the damage she could have taken from the unlockable hit was rather pitiful, especially with Grace's damage reduction properties that was percentile-based instead of number-based. Repeating this process 2 more times, they were able to slay the boss without any problems, all while Shiro taunted the living crap out of the boss without any skills. Glaring at Shiro just before the death, the nun cursed at Shiro over and over in her mind before collapsing into mist. Cracking her neck, Shiro dismissed her swords and crouched down near the boss's corpse. Well, ain't this pretty nifty? She dropped an interesting weapon along with some armor. Shiro chuckled. Reaching out, she grabbed the scythe and gave it a casual swing, * bang. Cracking against the ground, the material split apart like it was nothing, leaving behind a rather sizable ravine in the ground. The weapon was called the Devotee's Scythe, and the base stats of the weapon wasn't anything fancy due to the fact that it was just a purple-grade weapon. However, what truly caught Shiro's eye was the passive skill that it included. True Sight. After achieving a certain amount of understanding of the target, your next attack will ignore 90% of all armor. This is limited to 1 use per day and is refreshed at sunrise. Cost N/Athos was the same skill that the boss had used when they collected the motes, hence the need to buff up the tank's defense stat as much as possible. Do you girls want this scythe? If not, I'll recycle it and take the skill for myself. Shiro smiled. I don't use a scythe, so you can have it. Anyone else have any objections? Lyrica called out to the rest of the party, shaking their head. None of them had a problem with this. If you don't mind me asking, what do you mean by recycle it and take the skill for yourself? Helion asked curiously. It's something like this. Shiro grinned. Throwing the scythe in the air, nanobots swarmed around her and started to break the weapon apart. Once the scythe was destroyed, she used her nanobots to create a sword. Check out the sword, Shiro said as she threw the sword towards Helion. Inspecting the sword, he was surprised to see the true sight skill with the blade. Not only that, it was also the same level and grade as the scythe, only this time, in the form of a sword. Snapping her fingers, the sword crumbled back to nanobots and flowed back to her. Makes enough sense, I suppose. Helion shrugged. Anyways, there are some decent armor pieces here, so have a look to see if it's better than yours. Shiro smiled while gesturing to the cloth armor laid out on the ground. Unfortunately, the only one that used cloth armor was Sylvia, and the one that the boss dropped didn't provide any stat bonuses that may help her, storing the armor away. For now, they decided to sell it later since Shiro didn't want to recycle it, either due to the fact that the armor skill wasn't anything special like True Sight. So where do we go now? Shiro asked with a smile. Give me a second, Lyrica said as she walked over to the spot where the nun had been praying. Stabbing her sword into the ground, she narrowed her eyes and pushed it down like a lever. Asterisk KRR suddenly. The floor gave way as a passageway could be seen. We're going to be taking the steps down to hell. The next boss that we must face is the Twin Guardians. Lyrica smiled while gesturing to the staircase leading down into the darkness. Right then, care to give us another briefing? Shiro asked as they were walking down the stairs. Well, it's more like give you another briefing, haha. You could just have researched this, you know. Lyrica chuckled. Sometimes it's quite nice to have someone else do the research for you. Shiro shrugged. True. Right then, the Twin Guardians can't be damaged unless they're next to each other. During the fight, they will continuously apply debuffs to us until it gets to the point where we can no longer deal damage to them. Not only that, every 20% of damage they take, they will transport us to an illusionary plane of sorts where we have to go look for the two of them. There is something annoying about this plane, though. It shows traumas and what we are afraid of, so before the 20% damage threshold is reached, Sylvia will be buffing our tolerance to make this part easier. Should one of us fail in finding the two guardians within this plane, he will heal a percentage of his health back. Lyrica explained as Shiro nodded her head. That is rather annoying. Do you think I'll be able to damage them past the 20% mark in one go? Shiro asked curiously. Unfortunately, no, since a shield will appear around them the moment they take damage equal to 20% of their health. Lyrica shook her head. That does sound annoying. Shiro muttered before glancing at the party. Even without going to the Guardian, she already knew of her trauma/fears. Betrayal once more, death by the light god. The fact that she might not be strong enough when the age arrives. However, it was also due to these fears that she decided to trust her companions. Even if there could be betrayal, which she doubts. The old Shiro would have never revealed so much information about herself to people she couldn't read completely, as she's essentially giving them all the information they need to devise a strategy against her, but sometimes it's a leap of faith. A gamble. The chances could be low, it could be rigged, and it could never succeed. But if it does, the victory feels much better than what she can achieve on her own. After all, the peak is a lonely place without any companions. She knew better than anyone since she lost Isilia. Spending the years at the peak was lonely for Shiro. She may joke and laugh. She may poke people for fun, but even that has a limit. Loneliness is quite harsh on the human mind after all. Unless they're crazy, no one can tolerate countless years of being alone. Hence why Shiro is taking a leap of faith in her friends. She'll tell them what she can. This is most likely the last life after all. She might as well try everything she can. Are you all right? You looked quite mellow. Madison raised her eyebrow at Shiro's expression. Nothing much. Just thinking about what the future is like for all of us. There is a world-ending crisis coming in the near future. Say, Maddie, have you ever thought about settling down with anyone? Sylvia has Chunyu, and they're quite the loving couple I? Got anyone you have in mind? Shiro joked with a smile. Asterisk cough. Where did that come from? Madison coughed in surprise. Just a random thought of mine. What about you, Aram? Anyone in your mind? Shiro turned to Aram. Nope. Just me and research. Haha. Plus, I did run a *X toy store, you know? I'm pretty sure I can keep myself busy. Aram replied with a lick of her lips. Oi, don't be so open like that. Helion said with a blush, since he didn't exactly want to imagine his childhood friend keeping herself busy during a raid. Ho-ho, thinking of something. Are 18 now, are we? Aram chuckled with a hand over her mouth. Seeing the smugness on her face, Helion huffed and looked away, which caused her to laugh. PFT, the hell is this strange atmosphere? Lyrica laughed as Shiro shrugged. Just relaxing everyone before the fight, I suppose. Though to be fair, a few or us are still young despite our appearances. My current body is not even a year old, you know. Shiro chuckled. Speaking of which, when were you born again? As a snow girl? Lyrica asked curiously. Well, after I searched through the guild records, I found my very first file that was classed under Shino. They dated it to be the 24th of January, so my birthday should be a few days before that. Shiro replied. Hey, then it'll be your first birthday in a few months then. What should we do for it? Lyrica asked. Oh, it's Shiro's birthday soon? We should host a party with everyone then. Sylvia suggested with a smile. Don't get too hasty now, girls. Who knows? The new age might arrive before my birthday. Shiro shrugged. Don't be like that. You might jinx it. Lyrica pouted as Shiro only grinned and poked her cheeks. It's fine. Plus, a birthday isn't anything important for me. If I had to think about birthdays, I've already gone through quite a few of them back in Aria, and in this world as Kuromi. Shiro laughed. So Mum's probably gone through more than 100 birthdays then. No wonder it's nothing special to you. Ian said while looking around the walls of the staircase. Suddenly feeling a glare on her, Ian shivered and hid behind Lisa. Big sis, why are you hiding behind me? Lysandra asked with a twitching smile. It's a sibling's job to share the burden. Ian coughed as Lysandra only sighed with a soft smile. Ignoring Ian, who had just said that she was over 100 years old, Shiro kicked open the set of doors at the bottom of the staircase, revealing two giants that kneeled in front of what seems to be a portal. They were in a giant room that stretched as high as the eye could see, with dim orange orbs of light flickering in the air. Summoning Athra, Shiro stepped forward into the room with a smile. As she stepped into the room, combat started immediately. Punching the ground, the two giants pulled out two blood-red spears. Everyone into position. Lyrica shouted out as Madison grabbed her shield. Charging towards the two, a golden aura erupted out of her body as an illusionary figure could be seen above her. Roughly the same size as the giants, the figure had the same gear as Madison. Raising up her shield, the figure twisted her body and slammed the face of the shield against the right guardian, forcing his body to crash against the second guardian. Madison activated Taunting Cry. Suddenly, two pairs of bloodshot eyes glared at Madison. Activating an enhanced taunting skill used for the biggest bosses, Madison wanted to make sure that she could actually keep the aggro without Shiro accidentally taking it away from her. Okay, I've got it. You can attack now, Madison shouted out. Nodding their head, the party sprang into action. Watching this happen, Shiro thought for a moment before understanding what she should do to avoid grabbing aggro while still helping out. The party, snapping her fingers, all of the copies of Athra charged towards the bosses before stabbing deeply into the two boss bodies. Aimed at each of the joints, the swords locked their body in place. Should they try to force themselves to move, the swords will attempt to rip their limbs from their sockets, so unless they take the moment to pull out the blades, they were trapped. Raising her eyebrow in surprise, Aram didn't even need to use her gravity magic as Shiro had the bosses locked in place. Shrugging her shoulders slightly, she smiled and aimed her palm towards the fight guardian. Suddenly, a Tier 5 magic circle wrapped around her hand as several dark orbs could be seen floating around the bosses. Collapse, Aram commanded. Asterisk bang. Just as she said the word collapse, the orbs exploded, ripping out a chunk of their flesh. Blood spewed on the ground as the bosses flinched from the pain. Unfortunately, the attack seemed to have done nothing. Slowly, the muscles started to stitch themselves back together as if nothing had happened. Oh my, that's rather annoying, isn't it? Aram raised her eyebrow. Indeed, but we just gotta do a Shiro to it. Helion shrugged as he dashed towards the boss with his elemental armor. Summoning his flaming axe, he twisted his body and slammed the blade against the heel of the right guardian. Helion, there are a few different meanings to doing a Shiro, but the primary one is to stab the ass, okay? Aram said as her smile twitched. She understood that her friend probably wanted to express that he wanted to hit it very hard, but his phrasing could cause some misunderstandings. Did I just get permission to stab him? Shiro's ears perked up as 2 tier 5 magic circles immediately appeared under the guardians. No. And why do you have it ready at all times? Aram called out since she could cause the boss to evolve from the shame and rage. TCH. Clicking her tongue, then adjusted the magic circles so that they limited the boss's movements with chains rather than a spike. With Aram, Helion, Shiro, and Lysandra focusing on the right guardian and the others focused on the left, they were able to damage the guardians by 20% in no time. Suddenly, a notification could be seen blinking on their system interface as they were inflicted with a debuff. Guardian's Contempt, 1 stack. Current effects, -2% to all stats, 5% to all damage dealt, 5% to all defenses after the debuff was applied. The bosses started to fade into mist as the party was split up. Finding herself alone in a misty plain, Shiro raised her eyebrow before smiling. Let's see what kind of trauma or fear it wants to show me. Is it my death against Ikari? The party's death? My daughter's death? Shiro asked, soft chuckle. However, as her vision cleared up, what she saw wasn't her death, nor was it her party's death, and wasn't her daughter's death, either. Daiti was her best friend's death. Feeling the sickly sensation of piercing Isilia's heart. With her bare hands, Shiro's smile faded away. She could see Isila's hand grasped around her wrist, forcing it to go deeper while keeping an apologetic smile on her face. Sorry, this is the only way. Isilia muttered as she kneeled down on the spot. Staying silent, Shiro watched as her friend's lifeless body crumbled to the ground as her blood stained her hand. Looking down at her hand, Shiro narrowed her eyes. Before sitting down on a rock, she wasn't going to look for the guardian, as him healing some health back wasn't a problem for her. Out of all the traumas it had to pick, it picked the worst one as Shiro was completely livid. I'm killing him in one go, she muttered. Boom. Suddenly, a furious aura exploded out of her body as Athra trembled from her killing intent. The blade seemed to hum in excitement from the sensation. Wrapping the silver blade in a matte black color, blood runes slowly appeared in the center. Might as well give True Sight a try. Shiro narrowed her eyes. Sitting patiently on the rock, she created a ring with all the necessary skill that she needed. Soon, the area around her started to fade away as she was transported back to the main room. Glancing at the boss's health, it seemed like she was the only one that didn't find the boss, but that was fine. Looking back at Shiro, the party halted their breath since her killing intent was quite stifling right now. Cracking her neck, Shiro disappeared from her spot and reappeared behind the guardian. Doing a quick calculation on all the 2 boss movements, she reached the minimum requirement to use True Sight. Activating her Azura Sword Path, Berserker Path, Sword Domain along with other sword skills that she had stacked up on her nanotech. Ring, Shiro slashed at the 2 bosses without hesitation. Not only that, just to make sure that she could kill them before the barrier could make them immune, she activated her celestial language and Asteria's blessing. Asteria bestowed judgment on sinners who open the Pandora's box. I shall execute them, and none can pray for pardon. She chanted in a language that none of the party members could understand. Suddenly, a cruel crackle could be heard due the sound from the slash. It was as if a demon had just manifested behind Shiro and was relishing in her killing intent. Black chains erupted out from the ground, locking the gate guardians in place, while the illusionary form of a guillotine was formed around the 2. The executioner's blade was naturally the now matte black Athra that was dipped in Shiro's killing intent. KRRR. Slashing against the 2 guardians, a black and red blade energy cleaved not their bodies as her True Sight ignored their armor. A shield tried to wrap them up, but before it could block the blade, the guardians were already dead. Their bodies disintegrated into blood mist while the slash continued to travel down the ground, causing a bottomless ravine to open up in the room. Looking at Shiro, who had just killed the boss in one go, despite there being a mechanic to prevent this from happening, the party had to blink twice just to make sure that they were seeing things correctly. Taking a deep breath, Shiro dismissed Athra and turned to the party. Remembering a picture that she had seen on the web, Shiro coughed for a moment before opening her mouth. Sorry, I went a bit overboard. She apologized while sticking out her tongue and bopping her head lightly. Sorry, my ass. Sorry, my ass. Both Madison and Nimue retorted out at the same time since they could clearly see that Shiro was going for the kill. Ahaha, don't be like that. I just saw something that wasn't too pleasant despite being ready for it. I'll make it up to you in the next fight. Shiro laughed. It's fine. Considering your killing intent, it really picked the worst memory, huh? Lyrica smiled softly since she understood that Shiro wouldn't do something like this unless the boss had truly pissed her off. Yup. Anyways, how do we get to the next boss? Shiro asked curiously. We need a key that the boss drops, but considering the fact that you reduced them to mist, can I presume that the key is gone? Lyrica chuckled. It's probably down there. Shiro trailed off as she looked at the bottomless ravine that had just opened up. Estrella. Shiro called out. You called my empress. Estrella bowed as she exited Shiro's mana realm. Are you able to get the key for me? It should be down there. Shiro asked as Estrella nodded. Right away. Making a portal, Estrella disappeared from her spot. While she's doing that, I should make a bridge for you girls to come over, Shiro said with a smile. That's probably for the best. While the party made their way over, Helion and Aram looked at each other. Did she just ignore a raid mechanic? Helion asked. It's Shiro, Aram replied. But the system dash, it's Shiro. But she's still using the system no. But she's Shiro. It's Shiro. I didn't say anything though. You just need to know that it's Shiro. Aram sighed. Waiting by the portal for a while, Estrella appeared next to them with the key in hand along with a few of the equipment that the Guardians had dropped. Damn, the hole must have been quite deep for you to have taken this long, huh? Shiro raised her eyebrow. And who do you think caused that hole? Madison reminded as Shiro coughed and looked away. Glancing at the equipment, Shiro saw that most of them were all strength-based, so Helion could probably make use of them. Thank you, Estrella. You can head back now. Shiro smiled. Bowing towards Shiro, Estrella's body flickered away as she returned to the mana realm. Right then, most of this equipment is strength-based, so I think Helion is the most suited. Does anyone have any objections? Lyrica called out. Nope. I mainly focus on defense while Chinyu focuses on dexterity and agility. None of us has a need for strength-based equipment. Madison smiled since they were the frontliners. With Helion now in the party, he could make use of all the strength-based equipment that they find. Don't you have your attack mode where you use the axe? Don't you need strength for that? Shiro asked curiously. Not quite. It's a class skill and basically, when I activate it, it allows me to convert most of my defense into strength. Madison replied as Shiro finally understood why her attack was so high despite being a tank during the first fight. Fair enough. Shiro nodded before passing the equipment to Helion. Are you sure? He asked as he didn't expect all the equipment earned in this boss fight to just be given to him like this. Don't sweat it. It's not like we have a use for it to begin with. Shiro smiled as the other party members nodded their heads. But can't you recycle it to make something else? Yes, but I've already got the skills that are on the armor, so there's no point either. I would say that recycling does increase the inherent defense of the nanobots, but I've been recycling so much equipment to the point that 1 or 2 wouldn't make a difference. Just take it. Shiro chuckled. Furrowing his brows, Helion sighed and took the equipment. Thank you. Oh, and just out of curiosity, how many skills are you able to access? Helion asked curiously as the others were also interested. Fufu, you want to know? All of you want to know? I see, trying to dig up my secrets now, are we? So what should we do with this key? Shiro grinned. Before they could reply, she gestured for them to come closer. I'm kidding. Here, scroll through this list on the tablet, and you should see the skills that I have stored. Some are better than others, and I've classified them in terms of their usefulness. Of course, if you have a need for any of the skills, I can make you a ring or something and embed the skills into them. Shiro said with a smile. Wait, is this how you gave me that really good healing bracelet before? Sylvia widened her eyes. With eagerness, remembering the fact that Sylvia is a healing equipment freak, Shiro chuckled before nodded. Yup, if you want, I can make a separate tablet for you with all the support spells and mana regeneration spells. Just pick the skills you want, and I'll see if I can make it into a bracelet for you. She smiled. Sure. Nodding her head, Sylvia had an excited glint in her eyes as Shiro flexed her finger and made Sylvia a tablet. Making a tablet for everyone else, Shiro figured that she might as well make them each a ring or bracelet with some of the skills. Will these equipment last? Helion asked. Yes and no. As long as mana is supplied to them, they will last. However, to use the skills, they also use mana, so if you repeatedly use them without giving it mana, the rings will break. In addition to this, since it's nanobots, I need to be nearby to do some maintenance if you continue to pour mana into them. Because inherently, the nanobots are greedy for mana, and if you supply them with a giant pool of it, they may go berserk. Shiro replied, Ain't that pretty dangerous then? Helion's smile twitched. Not really, because that will only happen if you're super greedy. And I mean super greedy. If that happens, the nanobots will probably go out of control since you don't have the controller like I do. By that point, all you can do is delay the inevitable since the nanobots will dig deep into your body and infect every part, hoping to consume everything. In other words, it's like cancer. Shiro shrugged. And how do you know this? Because I've seen it happen a bunch of times in the labs. You see, the only reason I have nanobots is due to the experiments I was put through. In my first life, I was the first success, so I watched quite a few others get consumed and die. Before I left, though, I grabbed all the records I could, and they were quite thorough with describing how each of the experiments died so that they could make improvements. Shiro replied nonchalantly as the party felt a twitch creeping up on. Their smile.to think that she could mention something like human experiment so casually was quite eye-opening. Anyways, just know that you shouldn't get too greedy with giving nanobots mana since they will try to F***ck your sh**t up. Just be careful, and you can use it as much as you want. Though if it gets out of hand, I'll destroy them before they can do anything to you. Only if I'm close, of course. Shiro smiled. Wait, so the reason the bracelet broke last time is because of you? Sylvia asked as she narrowed her eyes. Oh look, I forgot I had this skill. Shiro quickly looked down at her phone, huffing slightly. Sylvia shook her head before picking out some skills. Once everyone had picked out a few skills that they liked, Shiro started to create rings with the most optimized build for each of them. Sylvia's ring was naturally decked out with mana regen since that was what she needed the most. With everyone ready, Lyrica held the key in front of the gate as a tier 4 magic circle appeared in front of them. Slowly, a swirl of red and orange energy appeared before them, lighting the room up with a hellish glow. Shall we enter the proper sanctuary of sin? Lyrica smiled before gesturing to the portal, stepping through. Their vision was clouded with a maroon hue before it subsided, revealing the burning landscape that was reminiscent of hell. In front of them was a blood river of sorts while bones and demons surrounded them. Clear out the mobs, and our ticket to the third boss will appear. Lyrica called out. Since there wasn't anything special in this area except the large amount of mobs, the party had a rather easy time. The only difficulty they had was the rising heat, which Shiro solved through her icy aura. That reminds me, when we were still in school, I used you as an air conditioner during one of the hot days, didn't I? Lyrica called out with a smile. Ah, I remember that. Honestly, if I didn't have this skill, it would have been annoying since I was still vulnerable to heat back then. And yet you now have 3 high-grade fires that almost exploded my forge. Helion reminded as Shiro only shrugged. Clearing out the mobs, they hear the sound of a bell ringing in the distance. Turning towards the Blood Lake, they could see a shadowed figure approaching them slowly on a wooden boat with a single lamp attached on the bow. The guide, LVL? They could not see his body figure as he was wearing a large black cloak that prevented anything to be seen. Rather than the guide, it was probably better to call him the Grim Reaper since he looked exactly like how they were described. State your goal. A voice rang it from under his hood. The voice was almost like a whisper, hushed but loud at the same time. Not only that, but his voice was also hoarse like sandpaper, scratching against their ears. We've come to seek the judge. Lyrica called out. The third boss of this raid was the Judge of Sin. If you answer with a different answer on This part, it would take a long time to reach the judge. You've come to seek the judge, yes? The guide asked to make sure. Indeed. Then come, I shall take you to the judge. Be careful of the lake. Fall, and you may not come back. He warned ominously before gesturing for the party to step in on the boat. Once everyone was in, he pushed the boat off the shore. Sitting on the boat and watching the burning scenery pass by, Shiro couldn't help but narrow her eyes at the guide. His level was obscure, and so was his class. Hell, there wasn't even a boss sign next to his name, which should have been the norm. However, this wasn't the case, as all she knew about him was his name, and that was it. Thinking about it for a moment, Shiro decided to ignore it for now and focus on the next boss. Do you want to explain the next boss, or is there nothing that we need to worry about? Shiro asked curiously since Lyrica was silent. Emin? Oh, there's nothing too bad about the next boss. You just need to make sure that you don't lie in front of him, meaning you can't do feints. Like the last boss, there is a checkpoint of sorts where he will summon the court and ask the party 3 questions. If you lie about any of these questions, he will gain a buff. It's just embarrassing and annoying if anything. Though I suppose you do get a debuff if you lie. It's called the judge's contempt, and your movement speed is reduced heavily along with your attack. Lyrica explained before, looking out into the horizon once more. Her eyes glossed over as alarm bells started to ring in Shiro's mind. Are you okay? She asked, noticing that everyone seemed to be looking over the horizon with a gloss over their eyes. Shiro glared at the guide with killing intent. Explain, she demanded. They are seeking for that of which is amiss. A lingering attachment. Make sure they stay on the boat, or else they may never return. The guide chuckled darkly as Shiro furrowed her brows. Then why am I not the same? Shiro asked while making sure that nanotech wires wrapped around her friends. They seemed to be in a semi-conscious state right now, which caused Shiro to worry as they could fall off at any moment. Your will is strong. You hold many attachments, but you accept their outcome. You seek the future, but don't focus on the past. While you may dream of the past, you don't seek it out. Curious, yes. The guide explained while glancing towards. Her pair of cold blue eyes locked with hers before a mist seemed to wrap around the area. This transition was supposed to give a trial to those that arrive. Show them what they seek, and if they ignored it, they had proved their will. However, you have remained steadfast, unwavering. You deserve a reward, a chance at a second trial. Would you accept? The guide narrowed his eyes. What do you mean by a second trial? How would it affect the party? Shiro questioned. It is as I had described, a second trial similar to this one. It will not affect the party, no. When you complete the trial, we will have reached the judge. Should you fail the trial, you may be lost in the rivers of time. What will you choose? The guide smiled. What are the rewards? And what does the trial entail? Shiro narrowed her eyes. Depending on what he meant by rivers of time, this could be a serious boon for her. As you do not seek the past, why don't we peer into the future? The guide shows you the path, and should you walk that path, you may stand before the judge. However, what consequences will it bring to this raid? I do not know, but it may change this place. This is the sanctuary of sin, a place where people confront their demons. You have slain the guardians despite the limitations. Your rage over the past is not one to be looked down upon. But the gods are now watching, little one. The gods are now watching. They choose to tamper, and they choose to wait. They choose to observe, and then they choose to answer. Do you accept this trial? The guide smiled as Shiro furrowed her brows. The gods are watching? They choose to tamper, and they choose to wait. Have they tampered with this raid? And what does he mean by they choose to wait? What are they waiting for? Shiro questioned herself as she analyzed his words. From what she understood, her previous actions of bypassing the system has caused the gods to now observe her. She knew that as the age comes closer, more and more powers will appear. She had already notified one of the demon gods due to her interaction with his anchor, so it wouldn't surprise her if there are more gods making anchors in this world. What confused her is why they decided to tamper with this raid. Thinking about it for a moment, Shiro decided to accept, but she wanted to know the goal of this trial. What's the goal? If I choose to accept, what do I have to do in order to pass? She asked. That is for you to find out, little one. Now, I ask again, do you accept this trial by the gods who have tampered with this raid? Staying silent, Shiro looked up at the guide. I accept. Suddenly, a wave of fatigue hit her mind as Shiro held her head. Good luck, little one. May the blessing of the guides help you. Gritting her teeth, she could only watch as her vision flicker before collapsing. On the boat deck, ####, are you watching, goddess? The little one has accepted your trial. She has decided to peer into her future. The guide called out to the sky. Indeed, quite a courageous one, is she not? I suppose one needs to be this courageous to be an empress rather than a queen. A feminine voice rang out as the fire started to disintegrate. A night sky could be seen above the river as the guide kneeled on the ground and bowed. Though I must say, the system is rather strict about her. The amount of things I must do to actually interact with her is quite numerous. The voice laughed as a graceful woman with long black hair landed softly against the boat. Her mere presence made one feel calm while her eyes watched over you with gentle warmth. Avatar of Nyx, Greek goddess of night. Let this be a taster for her before she comes to Olympus. Nyx chuckled before cupping her hand around Shiro's cheeks. ####MN. Groaning softly, Shiro rubbed her eyes before sitting up straight. Looking around her, she could see herself in a room of sorts that was decorated in a way that suited a small child. The hell? She muttered. Upon hearing her own voice, her pupils constricted as it was ominously young. Looking down, he could see that she was in a body that suited a 5-year-old's. What the F***ck? She cried out in her mind with surprise, quickly glancing at her system. Interface, she wanted to check her stats, but it was empty. In all her 3 lives, there had always been an icon for the system. But this time it was empty. Her vision was clear. There was no system. Hearing footsteps from outside of the room, Shiro turned towards the door. *KRR. Watching the door open, Shiro's breath halted in shock. Oh, you're awake. Was your sleep okay, darling? The woman smiled softly and picked her up. Her hair was snow white while her eyes a deep shade of red. Her facial features were delicate as there was a soft, charming smile on her face that was filled with motherly love. However, despite the woman's charming appearance, Shiro was not charmed. After all, it was one that she had seen basically every day. It was herself. Emin, darling, are you okay? The other Shiro furrowed her brows with worry before placing a hand on Shiro's forehead. There's nothing wrong with your body. Are you hungry? If you want, I can get your big sis Ian to cook you something. I know how much you like her food. The older Shiro smiled before walking out of the room with the baby Shiro in her arms. Walking down some stairs, she entered the living room. Is little sis awake? A voice called out. Popping her head around the corner, Shiro could see an adult version of Ian with an apron on while carrying what seemed to be a giant bowl of soup. She's just woken up now? She's probably hungry, so could you cook something for her? The older Shiro asked with a soft smile. Emin, sure. Addie and Lisa are coming back soon anyways, so it's probably a good time to cook. Ian nodded before placing the soup down on the table. While this was all happening, the baby Shiro sat there with a confused face. What the fuck? Sitting on the baby's stool, Shiro looked at the dinner table with a complicated expression. Ian was not as bratty as before. Her aura was mature, and she seemed to be in a constant state of calmness and brought serenity to her surroundings, which was quite a surprise for Shiro. Emin, are you okay, darling? You don't seem to be eating your food. The older Shiro asked with concern. Quickly shaking her head, the younger Shiro started to eat while thinking about what was happening. Nimue, Izul, Addie, Estrella, are you there? She called out into her mind only to get no response, realizing that she's alone in this trial. Shiro couldn't help but furrow her brows. Looking up, she saw the older Shiro turn on the TV only to furrow her brows, curious as to why she had that expression. The younger Shiro also looked towards the TV only to be surprised by the headline. Emergency. Demon god Veron invades China. Martial hero slain. China is now vulnerable. TCH, that's going to be annoying. The older Shiro muttered with a frown. Before changing the channel. Mom, I'm home. A masculine voice rang out. I'm home. Another voice followed up. This time, it was feminine. Addie, Lisa, welcome back. Yin's made some breakfast for you. The older Shiro called out with a smile. Hearing Addie's name, Shiro was rather curious as to what her son looked like in the future. Glancing towards the door, her eyes widened in shock. Holy F***ck, my son is handsome. She thought in surprise as she watched the red-haired youth step into the room with a charming smile. Ah, Even Tia is here. Morning, little sis. Atesh crouched down with a smile before patting Shiro's head. So my third daughter's name is Tia. Shiro thought to herself while looking towards Lysandra, who was behind Atesh. Compared to the Lysandra she knew in her own time, her daughter in the future seemed rather quiet. There was a slight air of mystery behind her as she sat down on the table and flipped her hair. Lisa, I know you want to look cool in front of Tia, but not at the dinner table, okay? The older Shiro sighed as Lysandra blushed in embarrassment before, nodding her head, chuckling in her mind. Shiro couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at Lysandra's actions of trying to look cool in front of her. Thankfully, it seems like everyone's still alive and well. Shiro nodded with a smile. However, that smile faltered a little when she thought about everyone else, including Nimue and Azul. But for now, she needed to get a general grasp of the things that were happening around her. By the way, Mum, when I was out, I heard some news. About Veron. Atesh said while grabbing a plate for himself. MN, he seems to have invaded China and killed the martial hero. Without a hero, they can't get the buff from the domains, so defending China is going to be quite hard. The older Shiro replied with a sigh. Do you want to go see Grandpa so that we can help his sect evacuate? Atesh asked. Perhaps, but I think Nantian should be able to handle it though. The older Shiro shook her head. Are you sure? I mean, I get that he's tier 6, but he's still trying to evacuate while a demon god is on the loose, right? Atesh furrowed his brows. Addie, just let Mum think about it, okay? We have just found out about this right now after all. Een shook her head with a soft smile. Sorry. Addie scratched his head apologetically, furrowing her brows. Shiro found this situation odd. First of all, there was no way that she would just leave the sect alone since the old man had provided her quite a bit of support. Unless something was happening, she wouldn't let Nantian face off against Veron alone, especially when his guardian was the one that had almost killed her. See, talking about depressing topics has made Tia unhappy. Say something nice, okay? Lisa frowned before inching closer to Shiro in order to try appease her. You kids finish your meals, I'm going to do some scouting, okay? The older Shiro sighed as she left the dinner table. Addie, how many times do I have to tell you not to mention anything or the sort to Mom? You know how it is. Een sighed as she started to feed the younger Shiro some food. Sorry, it just slipped my mind, okay? Atesh sighed. So have you found a way to establish a domain and anchor yet? Een asked as this sent alarm bells through Shiro's mind. Wait, I don't have domains or anchors. She widened her eyes as she knew how important this was to the queens, demons, and gods that are participating in the new age. Without this, she was technically not a participant. No, we haven't. The enemy aren't so kind to just give us the information. For free now, are they? Atesh leaned back on his chair. Unless we can find a way to help Mum establish a domain, she can't fight them. Did you get any word back from Ani? Unfortunately, that's a no as well. Ani, Grandpa, and Grandma are all trying to make sure that Japan is safe after all. Thankfully, there is not as much priority on Japan as the other places, but it's still hard for them to defend, especially since they don't have a domain. Lysandra shook her head. What about everyone else? Lyrica and all that. Een furrowed her brows. They're busy as well. Our main priority is to set up a domain for Mom. Unless we can do this, there's nothing else we can do other than run. You know this, big sis. Atesh shook his head. That I know. It's just annoying, that's all. Een looked down on the food as she had finished feeding Shiro. While this was all happening, Shiro finally understood a little of what was going on. So in the future, I wasn't able to establish an anchor or domain, which made it so that the only thing for us to do was run. The other queens aren't exactly cooperative, so this is probably something I need to figure out by myself. Shiro narrowed her eyes while looking around her. The house was rather simple in terms of decoration. If anything, it almost looked like they had just recently moved in. I need to find out about everything that's happened so far and what I can do. Since I'm still just a kid, I can't access my magic yet. I'm about as weak as they come right now. Shaking her head, she wanted to try to get off her stool only to realize that she was buckled up. Emin? Tia, you want to get out? Een asked with a soft smile as Shiro nodded. Undoing the buckle, Een set Shiro down next to the sofas before taking all the plates and started to wash up. Tia, do you want to watch your show? Lysandra asked as she crouched down next to Shiro. Shaking her head, Shiro declined the offer. She had more important tasks than watching a kid's show. Suddenly, Atesh stood up with a frown. Atesh, In called, out with seriousness in her voice. But big sis. Atesh. You know Mom doesn't want you to fight them. In shook her head. No buts. In shook her head adamantly. Gritting his teeth, Atesh could only sit back down with anger. Suddenly, mana surged around the house as Shiro could see a barrier being formed just outside of the window, blocking. A barrage of Tier 5 spells. The barrier shimmered slightly, but stood strong. Seems like I'm not liked in the future. Shiro thought to herself as she climbed over to the window. I don't mind them, Tia. Let Big Sis take you back to your room first. Okay. Lysandra smiled before looking out of the window with rage in her eyes. Bringing Shiro upstairs back to her room, Lysandra left with a frown on her face. Curious as to what was happening, Shiro tried to make her way to the toilet so that she could look out of the window to see what was happening outside. Trying her best to walk over to the window, she was disgusted at how weak her limbs were as she couldn't walk for a long time without falling back. Cursing in her mind, she started to climb up to the windowsill. Peering out of the window, she saw Lisa and Addie with furious expressions on their face while Een was shaking her head behind them. Just outside of the barrier, Shiro could see a group of people who aimed Tier 5 spells towards the house with hostile expressions. Before she could keep watching, she felt a pair of arms wrap around her. Glancing behind her, she could see her own serious eyes. What did you do to my daughter? You're not her. The older Shiro said with mild killing intent. Ah shit. I suppose you can't speak in that body. The older Shiro narrowed her eyes and flexed her fingers. Suddenly, a nanotech collar appeared around Shiro's neck. Don't speak just yet. We're going to my room. Once she returned to her room, the older Shiro locked the door and set up a few formations. Speak, she demanded with a frown. Oh damn, this really does work. Shiro raised her eyebrow before turning to her older self. Before you kill me or do anything that may torture my soul, let me just say that I barely have a clue on what the F***CK is happening as well. Then do you know where my daughter is? The older Shiro asked as swords appeared around her. Unfortunately, no, wait. Let me finish, woman. Shiro cried out in shock when she saw her soul sword appear. Since she was the same person, she knew what her soul sword can do, and it wouldn't surprise her if the older Shiro was able to just extract her soul from Tia's body. Go on. Listen, I was in the past. The age of demons and gods hadn't started yet. I met this person called the Guide. I was then given a trial, and the next thing I knew, I was here. Shiro explained while leaving some parts of the truth out of the picture. The Guide. So you're telling me this person sent you to the future before the age could even begin? The older Shiro narrowed her eyes. Yes. T. The older Shiro shook her head and prepared to swing her sword. I'll just stop. Let me explain and at least try to convince you, goddammit. Shiro shouted out with annoyance. Was I always this unreasonable? She huffed in her mind. There's no need for you to explain since it's impossible. Unless you're mortal, body dies on the spot, and your soul is kept in slumber for years before reawakening. There's no way for you to just jump to the future. I know that. However, what if a god is involved? The procedures they must do to pull something like this off is quite strict, and not to mention, not many gods can do this. Since you came from the past, the system was still around. With the gods being bound by the authority levels, they must be willing to sacrifice quite a bit to pull something like this off. Even the god of time would struggle if he tried it in the past. The older Shiro shook her head. Well, believe it or not, it's what had happened. I just want to know what I must do to pass this trial, but I think I have an idea now. Shiro shrugged. Oh, I think I need to help you establish a domain, as well as an anchor. So far, all clues lead to this. I don't have the system interface, so I can't be sure, so I'm just guessing at this point. Shiro explained while the older Shiro narrowed her eyes before tapping Tia's forehead. Suddenly, black chains wrapped around her body as Shiro felt a pain assault her mind. Feeling a sense of weightlessness overwhelm her body, Shiro found herself in a strange state. Her body was transparent, and she was currently floating above Tia's unconscious body. Looking down at her hands, she noticed that it was back to ADULT form. Turning towards the ADULT Shiro, she could see the shock on Her face. Welp, I guess the secret's out then. Sup, older me. Shiro grinned and gave herself a small wave. Taking a moment to massage her eyes, the older Shiro sighed. Okay, if it's me we're talking about, I can definitely imagine myself king up the system and causing this to happen. The older Shiro sighed. Okay, to make sure that you're actually me, I'm going to ask you questions that only I would know. The older Shiro narrowed her eyes. First, what is my favorite food? It's not food, it's a drink. It's juice. Shiro replied with a shrug since food was nice, but she enjoyed her juice. Okay, second question. What's my favorite weapon? A spear since it can poke the ass the easiest. However, we mostly use swords and guns since we're used to using them. MN. Third question. Who do I love? The older Shiro narrowed her eyes. PFT. Widening her eyes, Shiro blushed in embarrassment and looked down on her fingers. I don't. No. Shiro muttered back. Oh my god, you really did come from quite far back in the past, haven't you? The older Shiro raised her eyebrow after seeing her embarrassed younger self. Hush it. You're me, so you've been through this already. Shiro pouted. Yes, but I now have a third biological daughter, so I'm better in this regard. Also, just because you're me, doesn't mean I'm okay with my daughter suddenly disappearing. Thankfully, for you, her soul is still there. The older Shiro pointed back down at Tia's body. Near her, Shiro could see the faint silhouette of Tia sleeping soundlessly. So until this is over, I'm guessing you're in her body for now. The older Shiro sighed. MN, before we go to anything important, mind telling me who I like? Shiro asked. Narrowing her eyes at her younger self, the older Shiro grinned. Nope, if I told you. It might change the future, you know? Oh, you can CK right off with that T. While this might be the quote-unquote future, it's not at the same time since it's a trial. So you can tell me, and it'll be fine. Who knows? This might just be an isolated space caused by the system in the future that can be used as a trial in the past. We don't know. Shiro huffed. Yes, but it's no fun like that. It was quite foo-foo. Interesting to find it out for myself, so I won't spoil you of the fun. The older Shiro laughed with a smug expression. Go CK yourself. Shiro flipped herself off. You know, with you here, I can indeed. The older Shiro chuckled and licked her lips seductively as a joke. What the CK have I become in the future? She thought to herself while face-palming in soul form. Calming her mind down, she looked back at herself. Anyways, enough with the jokes. So far, we know that this is a trial. You need to do something in order to return to the past. There is also a chance that this is not actually the future, but rather an isolated space of one of the probabilities. So the god that tampered with this is someone quite high up on the hierarchy. Indeed, I'll run a search on high-level gods that I know of right now. The older Shiro nodded her head. You seem to have accepted things quite quickly. Shiro raised her eyebrow. Of course. I'm me after all. Plus, knowing myself, I'd be quite pressed for time if I'm in the same situation. With me understanding the situation and not killing you instantly, I can actually work with you to figure things out. Honestly, this reminds me of the time I spent with Big Sis Kuro back in that trial. The older Shiro chuckled before a screen appeared before Shiro. Check this list and see if any of the gods here can potentially make this trial. Wouldn't Kronos be on this? Shiro asked as he was the god of time. Normally yes, but the new age has really ked with his powers. Right now, his powers are limited with the future being classed as uncertain. There's probably a good chance that it's the same in the past, so I took him off the list. Plus, this might not even be the actual future, so it's outside of this scope of power. For all we know, it could be an illusion. The older Shiro shrugged. I suppose that's why you put Asteria down then. She is the goddess of the stars, and they can use the stars to predict the future. So she could have probably worked with another god to make this trial. You could be a very detailed illusion after predicting my future and seeing how I would react. Shiro agreed. Exactly. The older Shiro smiled. Honestly, I have no clue. I say we should just play along for now and help solve your domain and anchor problem. If you don't mind telling me, why can't you create one? Shiro asked. No idea. I don't know how to set it up even after copying and analyzing their magic circles. Apparently, I myself am lacking something. The older Shiro sighed. Before she could reply, the house started to shake from the combat. Asterisk sigh. The kids are fighting again. The older Shiro sighed and stood up. Why are people targeting you? Shiro asked curiously. Pausing in her footsteps, the older Shiro looked down before glancing back at her. Because I took the system away from them. They're now alone without a helping hand in this broken world.